Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, and welcome to another episode of Media Matters for Anfield Index. It's just under 24 hours since the Reds vanquished Lille at Anfield, and no matter what happens in the Champions League tonight, the Reds will be top of every single table you care to mention. There's a lot to like. It's nearly perfect, but nearly maybe being the key word. And here to tell us and talk through how perfect it is at the moment is the renowned and the respected David Lynch. I mean, being honest, David, right now, there's a lot to like about being a Red, isn't there?
yeah. I mean, it's incredible how some people are finding things to moan about. Maybe not everyone agrees with that, but yeah, absolutely remarkable. I mean, 7 wins from 7 in the Champions League, and then you consider the fact that alongside that in the Premier League, they're going great guns, got a massive lead there, and just playing like the best team in Europe at the moment, which is so much more than I expected. And if anyone expected better, that kind of surprises me really. So it's just been a phenomenal start to the season, really, really enjoyable to watch. And just continued last night with yet another good result and yet another good performance, but the two often go hand in hand.
Yeah, they do. And it did feel that way. The scoreline was close, but it did feel a deserved victory for us. And before we get into it, it's probably worth just playing a short clip of what Arne Slot said after the game, just in case anyone's not seen this at all.
Yeah, I would say, I'm used to from these players. What maybe today was asked a bit more from them, that they had to be patient, because the reason why Lille has done so well, 21 games unbeaten, and the teams they've beaten in the Champions League, is, without any disrespect at all, but they don't have the best players in the world. They're very good players, but they don't have the best players in the world. And then to be able to do so well tells you how disciplined they are, how hard they want to work, how well the manager does there over there.
They are a very good team, I think it's fair to say, and people may not have clocked their record before they came to Anfield, 21 unbeaten, but it was well deserved, this victory, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the scoreline kind of does make it look a little bit closer than it was in reality. I thought Liverpool kind of dominated from start to finish, really, and the underlying numbers reflect that. I think Liverpool kind of 2.5-ish expected goals, Lille about half an expected goal. They only have one shot on target, and obviously it does hit the back of the net, and it's quite fortuitous in terms of how it comes about. But I thought, other than that, Liverpool completely managed any threat they had. Obviously, they were looking to counter-attack a lot, and that was their approach, but completely managed that and cut them open several times, really. Had a lot of good opportunities to score goals, only took 2 of them, but they never looked kind of uncomfortable, really. And even when Lille get their goal, I'm kind of thinking, on the basis of what we've seen so far, I fully expect Liverpool to go on and win this, and then they did go and do that. So to do that, and this is the thing, is you can get locked up and kind of thinking, oh well, we're used to this under Jurgen in Europe, that we beat teams, and this is only a side from the French league. But it's like you say, 21 games unbeaten coming into this, and wins over Real Madrid. They beat Atletico in Madrid, which is unbelievable. Get a draw with Juventus as well, although I guess everybody's getting that result this season because Juve's record is mental. But yeah, a lot of really, really good results thrown in there alongside it. And I think the thing is, they've had a lot of draws in that run of 21 unbeaten, but if you get a lot of draws, you're a side that's very, very hard to beat. And I thought you saw that in certain phases of the game, that were very disciplined, as Arne Slot says, and looked hard. They could make themselves hard to beat, but Liverpool just seemed to have answers to that, and there was it could have been more, really, in the end, in terms of the winning scoreline. So a really, really good performance, so dominant and impressive. But we how many performances have we said that about this season from Liverpool? They've been brilliant.
Yeah, it does feel a little bit rinse repeat at the moment. The shot volume, the XG, all the underlying stats, we do seem to be dominating. And it's kind of a recent thing, but we always know what he brings. Harvey Elliots has been in great form recently, and he was in great form in this one. So let's just have a listen to what he said after the game about his sub role.
In the last couple of games, guys come off the bench and really impact on matches. You've been part of that. How do you bring that positivity matches? How do you bring that right mindset? Because it's frustrating at times, sometimes not to start, but consistently impacting from the bench.
I think, for me personally, it's nothing I haven't done before. I was that player kind of for half a season last season as well.
He was that player for half a season last season, and under Slot, his minutes have been hard to come by. And against Brentford, he had a huge impact in a short space of time. I mean, let's be honest, David, in this one, 45 minutes, he was a real game changer for us, wasn't he?
Yeah, absolutely brilliant. And I think it's interesting, he said about how good he's been in that role. And I think, Liverpool fans have been saying kind of, okay, I understand maybe why he's not in the starting 11 at the moment, because Szoboszlai's been brilliant. Curtis Jones has been in and out in terms of the midfield and done a good job there as well. So it is hard to get those starts. But what's been surprising is that Harvey Elliott hasn't been leaned on a little bit more in terms of that being a kind of game breaker late in the game, because for me, he's the best in the squad at that sort of thing. Getting into those spaces and kind of finding ways and just speeding it up and slowing it down, finding little gaps. He's just absolutely sensational when you put him into that sort of game. And I think that's one kind of little blot on Slot's copybook, really, that he hadn't kind of discovered that in Elliott and thought that might be a useful tool in some of these games, particularly like Forest away, where he could have used him. And I don't think he gets on against United, does he? Or if he does, he only gets very little at the end. So these are a couple of games where I think Harvey Elliott really could have made a difference. But the good news is I think this week and these last couple of games have maybe opened Slot's eyes a little bit about what he's got in front of him. Maybe it's not been obvious in training, but he's really seen that Harvey Elliott can make an impact in these games and open things up late on. So that's really, really good to see that and kind of reassuring, really, in terms of, talking about Harvey Elliott's future as well. So, he's been brilliant, but I think it's not a surprise to any of us who've watched Liverpool over the last couple of years that he can do that sort of thing. But he was very, very good when he came on against a side that was looking to make it difficult. He just didn't allow them to do that and picked out pockets and got a bit deserved luck with his goal, really.
Yeah, more than earned it. No two ways about it. And I know you talked about it there and you've written about it today as well. Does it feel like, I don't know even if it's enforced on Slot, the last few games, Elliott's come in, Chiesa's having an impact from the bench, Núñez naturally against Brentford. It almost feels, and I don't know whether it's enforced or what, but he is starting to trust his squad more.
Yeah, absolutely. That's it. I kind of wrote that. Yeah, the idea really is that I just think we're seeing a little bit more that he's showing a bit of faith in them and is willing to do so. Like I say, Harvey Elliott being thrown on late against Brentford and him saying, okay, go on, then you go and show me what you're all about. A few games ago, like I said, there were opportunities to do that he didn't take. So it feels encouraging he's starting to do that. Seeing a little bit more of Endo coming in to close out games, which I think he hasn't let Liverpool down at all. I think Quansah coming back in yesterday was hugely significant because, again, it got to the point where he gets dragged out the team early doors in the season and everyone's thinking, has he been completely bombed here? He couldn't get minutes at all, but he comes in and has a really kind of composed showing. We're finally seeing the best of Chiesa as well. So it feels like the squad's got itself in a position where, fitness-wise and in terms of the manager's belief in them, we're in a really good spot, and he has he is more trusting in those fringe players now. So I think that's it's really, really good news, to be honest. And I think Liverpool and the manager will reap the benefits of that change.
Yeah, fingers crossed. And there was one I wanted to ask you. I mean, we've talked about Darwin Núñez to death on these parts, but even last night, it kind of felt like when you looked at Darwin Núñez's underlying stats, if Darwin Núñez was a defensive midfielder, his numbers were brilliant last night because he sort of chased and harried, tackled everything. Maybe the attacking bits, there was the odd bit of a typical lax pass and things like that. But he put a shift in, didn't he?
Yeah, brilliant, really, on the defensive side. I mean, I think he wins 4 out of 4 tackles, which I'm not sure when I've ever been doing those kind of post-match videos, I've ever seen that from a centre-forward. So that's quite impressive. And he harried, he worked hard. And you've got to do that. He's a big part of the reason Liverpool only give up half an expected goal through his sheer work rate. And I thought, some occasional sloppy passes, but he was decent in build-up, generally speaking. I think he lays on 3 chances, so creates 3 shots. So and has 1 shot himself, which obviously is completely the opposite of what we used to with Núñez in terms of what he was kind of over the last couple of seasons. Just an absolute monster in terms of getting shots. But I kind of don't mind when he's this more sane version of himself. And, again, it kind of comes back to I just want him to be useful for this team winning between now and the end of the season, even if it's not going to work out for him, which I don't think it will. Just want him to show that he's got some value. And I think we are starting to see that he can do that. And yeah, I mean, particularly games where you're missing Jota, can Núñez come in and do the job? And I think, yes, not unbelievable on the attacking side yesterday, but kept the ball moving, worked his socks off and did the defensive work and battled really hard. And obviously has one ruled out for offside as well. So yeah, that if he comes in and gives that sort of level of performance between now and the end of the season, Liverpool don't need him to do that 30 times. They need a lot less than that, hopefully. And if he comes in and gives that performance, then that will keep Liverpool going. So yeah, really happy with what he contributed yesterday.
Yeah, a good outing for Darwin. And we should talk about the main man. There's no two ways about this. And we always think, what different things can we come up with to discuss Mo Salah? He'll probably actually be quite frustrated, won't he, that he only got on the score sheet once, because he did have a number of chances in this one, but it's still a brilliant goal when it comes.
Yeah, six shots he takes yesterday. So, again, he's kind of getting in positions, isn't he? But it's just kind of, you do go through those little runs where it doesn't go in as frequently or whatever. And, it's not a kind of reflection on his finishing, because we know how good he is in those positions. I mean, the one, watched it back again today, the one where he takes the incredible first touch and it's inches wide. He's so unlucky that one doesn't nestle. I think the pressure from the defender has maybe a little bit to do with that. But I just think, in terms of getting goal opportunities and putting himself there, he's just unrivaled at the moment, really. And yeah, another record to add there. I mean, the fact he's going to surpass Thierry Henry probably this season just shows you the level of player that we're talking about here. Really is, unbelievable. And it's just picking up those records. And I know, there's been this kind of weird discussion about him recently, hasn't there? About, it gets past January and his form dips and he's gone 3 games without a goal. So, is this the end of Mo Salah? But it's like, these runs are going to happen. It's normal. He was on a run prior to that, wasn't he, of a goal or assist in 12 consecutive games in the Premier League. That's unsustainable. It's freakish. He does have those sorts of runs more than most people, but it is always going to come to an end. There is always going to be a game where you struggle to score. So he's got a few of those out the way. Scores an absolutely crucial goal yesterday, and he's back amongst it now. And I'm sure we'll see more goals from him in the coming games as well. So I don't think people should buy into that idea that he's going to be poor in the second half of the season.
No, to be on 39 goal contributions in 31 appearances so far, it is just insane numbers. It really is. And it's going to go higher. I mean, in this one, he gets a great goal, but this I'm still coming to terms with. I don't know if you've worked out the impact on the table. And Arne Slot talked about this post-match. So let's just have a little listen to what he said.
To say that it's an advantage to be 1 or 2, we still don't know yet if that's an advantage or not. You might be lucky, you might be very unlucky, and ending up 8 can mean that you are maybe lucky. So for me, it doesn't tell me anything. What for me is the most important thing for tonight is that we've managed to skip around, and that is definitely worth a bit.
I mean, it's positive we're automatic, so we won't have the 2-legged playoff. The position, though, I mean, Liverpool are guaranteed a top 2 because of a crazy sort of result with Benfica, Barcelona. I don't think anyone saw that late drama coming, but it just might. We're not quite fully certain what this means. This is new territory. It's great to say this guarantees sort of 15th to 18th to the playoff. That could still be, though, Real Madrid or someone like that, couldn't it, in all honesty?
Yeah, that's it. It's really hard to judge because of how kind of chaotic this new version of the competition is that you will have sides lower down who can then sneak into those 15th to 18th. It's not just going to end up that top 8. It's not going to be the 8 that you would have picked out at the start, to be honest. So it's going to be really kind of strange, and we'll see how good that is to finish in the top 2. I think what is interesting is the one thing I think we can ascertain is there's effectively no difference between finishing first or second, maybe a little tiny bit of money or something like that. Maybe someone said £700,000 to me or something like that. So maybe that may be correct, but that's not massive difference for Liverpool. And so what it means is that Liverpool, as he says, they missed that extra round, but also this 8th game is not massively important. There's not too much riding on it. So that is an extra game where you don't have to think too much about it. You don't have to go quite so strong. So that's quite encouraging. So yeah, to have sealed that with 7 games gone is pretty special, really. And I think again, it's just one more thing that's going in Liverpool's favour in terms of keeping them on track for being in kind of all 4 competitions, because you need to turn as many games into dead rubbers as you possibly can, I suppose, throughout the season. And maybe this adds another one. But of course, in terms of what it actually means for Liverpool's draw, we're going to have to wait a little while to find out who they might actually be facing, and hopefully they get a little bit of luck on that front as well.
Yeah, fingers crossed. It would just probably be typical Liverpool to do it the hard way, but we'll see what it brings. And you mentioned this game. I mean, we're jumping ahead of Ipswich, but it is important to talk about PSV and possible rotation. And Alexis McAllister actually spoke about it after the game. So let's just have a listen to what he said about it.
We have a really good team.
Just finally, that's through to the last 16 with a game to spare. How do you approach the final game in Eindhoven next week? Do the players care about finishing top of the group now, given that given that you're already through, or is that irrelevant?
No, of course, every game is important for us. Every game is a possibility to show that we wanna be in the team with trophies. So for sure, we are gonna think about Ipswich now, but after we have a really difficult game against PSV. So we will give our best to win that game as well.
I know it's great intentions and you want to hear the players saying that, no doubts about it at all, David. But if we're honest, do we want to see a lot of people not on the flight to Eindhoven and a lot of people rested up for the league games?
Yeah, I personally do. I mean, I kind of, disagree sometimes with people in terms of what they see Slot and where he will rotate and where he might, and kind of, I think he kind of has a different view a lot of the time to what we would traditionally expect that he would do. But I thought it was interesting that he kind of suggested in his press conference yesterday about, he had acknowledged that there's not a big difference between first and second, that it doesn't necessarily matter. And now Liverpool have done the important bit, which is getting in the top 2. So that to me suggests really that he's going to approach this in a kind of mindset of, it's not the worst thing in the world if we do get beat. Let's just go out there and and it gives an opportunity then to give some rests out. So I'm thinking the ones he's shown priority, I think, to give rests where he's been able to is Gravenberch, Virgil van Dijk, and Mo Salah. They are the leaders for minutes, aren't they? So I wouldn't be surprised, I'll say, if those 3 didn't make the trip, and then you see a starting 11 that is, very much kind of, an Endo maybe starting, maybe even Chiesa can get a start at that point. That would be fantastic. I think he's going to maybe go more down that kind of line of thinking with it.
Yeah, you would hope so in that regard, because especially those 3, the minutes are just totaling up, and a bit of rest in the legs at such a key part would be so vital. And yeah, a good night all round, and we move on to the next one. But I'm almost going to rewind a bit when we talk about the off the field stuff. I know you've seen this. Ibou Konate followed on a Slot in the press conference, and there's almost a genius to the way Ibou did this, because media training went out the window almost, and he was completely honest, but he did give us a few sort of reveals, a few bits. So let's just have a listen to what Konate said.
I rushed my comeback with my knee, but I've done this for my team, and I can die for this team, then it's fine. And my knee will come back really 100% very soon. It's fine.
I mean, those comments went viral for understandable reason, but it makes complete sense why he didn't play last night if he's rushing and he's in pain, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, fair play to him for doing that. And it's kind of interesting to me, that one, because, my kind of takeaway really on this new medical staff and the way that this football staff approaches injuries from people I've spoken to up to this point of the season has been that they've generally taken a very cautious approach, really. And kind of any niggles, you will sit out training. They do not take risks whatsoever. But it's interesting that Konate, they see him as so vital to what they want to do that they were willing to kind of force that one a little bit. I think the stuff he said about still taking some painkillers with it or whatnot, I know people have pounced on that and a bit worried, but to be honest, that's footballers in general. Really, there's a lot of that going on because it's so hard to get your body on the pitch, 3 days between every game and just constantly doing that. So I think that's more kind of widespread than people would maybe expect. But it was an interesting and very honest thing to say. And I think one that maybe, Tony Barrett would have pulled him aside after that one and said, "I've not really done us any massive favours being as honest there." But great for us as journalists to hear that honesty.
Yeah, I did wonder about that. And something tells me if Tony Barrett pulled him aside for that, he probably had a bit of a chat about the contract comments, because that kind of got expanded on a bit more, didn't it, by Ibu around, yeah, and I think we all know he was referring to that one person. What was your take on it? Because a lot of people have jumped on that there's a bit of worry, and naturally you understand contacts, sort of high tension situations at the moment. Did you just take that as nothing to worry about, it'll probably get done at some point?
Yeah, I mean, I really don't worry about the contracts too much, full stop, like that. I just think, these things do take time, and he's not really given any reason to be massively concerned there or anything to hugely worry about or anything. So, I just think, again, it was just an incredibly honest kind of answer, wasn't it, in terms of just saying that, we have been speaking about it, we're working on it, but nothing's kind of done yet, and we'll see how we go with that. He didn't say anything that was concerning, like that he didn't want to stay, and I think, one of his early answers there, he said, "I would die for this club." So I think he's pretty keen to stay. But obviously, I get the impression that the priority at the moment is kind of trying to pour everything into sorting the three big ones. But I think Canate, again, that's being quietly done in the background. That they're having talks there, and so hopefully it won't be too far away from being done.
Fingers crossed. And yeah, something tells me Tony Barrett will be asking Virgil van Dijk what he's doing next time out of the centre-half pool when it comes to press conferences, but we'll see, because it was good and it was refreshing. And speaking of press conferences, obviously going back even further to Friday, we got an update we didn't expect and didn't really want around Diogo Jota. Just in case anyone missed that, because I've heard people quote different things about this. Let's just listen to what Arne Slot said specifically.
Arne, do you know yet the situation with Diogo? Obviously, he missed the weekend. How long you expected to be without him, and how close is Joe Gomez to coming back into the fold?
Maybe Jota a bit earlier than Joe, and both of them are expected to be back with us in weeks, not in months. So, but I've said many times before that the last stage of rehab is the most difficult one, or the one that can sometimes add a few days or not. But it's clear that we are expecting them to be back with us in the upcoming weeks.
I mean, there's no player like Diogo Jota where it's a niggle, as Arne Slot pulls it, on one day, and then all of a sudden the press conference on Tuesday we're talking about rehab and only just beating back Joe Gomez, who's pretty serious. I mean, it just never seems to be good news, does it, with Jota's injuries?
Yeah, I was really surprised by that one as well, because obviously in the press conference prior to that, he did just say a niggle. One of the answers he said to me, which was about kind of, I asked him about Jadon Danson. He's like, well, we expect Jota to be back pretty soonish anyway, so we're not worried about that. So I was kind of thinking, oh, well, he's going to have a chance for Ipswich. And then obviously this subsequent press conference, he kind of went into more detail. And yeah, it's another kind of, it's not a serious one, but it's more serious than we maybe thought it would be. It's not so much a niggle, but it's a proper injury. So yeah, really disappointing. Yeah. And, again, it just kind of throws into the mix, doesn't it? The kind of question marks over Jota and his long-term future and what Liverpool want to do there. But in the short term, it's just frustrating, really, because, he could have got a run of games there. And I wrote something on my Substack, that when he'd just come back and scored the goal against Forest, saying that he should be in the team and should be the starting centre forward. And then, of course, the reason that isn't the case is because he's picked up another injury. So, yeah, just incredibly frustrating with him, really.
It is frustrating short term. It is right to sort of discuss long term briefly, because, as you mentioned, his injury record, he's 28 in the summer. He'll have 2 years. And we know 2 years is that key part, especially for FSG, Michael Edwards, the way they've always worked historically. A lot of people, obviously, he's an elite number 9 on his day, but there is a real question mark about Liverpool, whether they would want to renew Diogo Jota now, isn't there?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. To the point that, it's kind of with his contract situation being where it is, and obviously there's question marks over Núñez as well. I still am of the belief that he would likely leave this summer, regardless of what he does, really. So you've got two centre forwards there with big question marks over them. So for me, with Jota, I can't imagine with his injury record that Liverpool are tripping over themselves to go and give him a new contract this summer, in a summer where you typically would with someone being 2 years out. He almost, to me, because you've got that Núñez question, it almost kind of suggests to me that the ideal summer from Liverpool's perspective is you lose Núñez, you bring someone in who is more suited to this manager, who is an elite level centre forward, who you want and you believe is capable of starting all the games and doing the job. And then you almost kind of let Jota run his contract down and you say, okay, we get another 2 years out of this player. When he's available, it's an amazing bonus because he's a brilliant goal scorer. If he's not, we've got this other centre forward we bought who hopefully is going to do the business for us. So, that's kind of, I think, how Liverpool are going to approach that, really, rather than, getting themselves in a tiz about getting money back for him or, giving him a new contract. I think, I just think it's one of those where they'll think, well, okay, we can get another 2 seasons, get as many games as we can out of him. It's almost he's a bonus when he's available. Then that's absolutely fine by us.
Yeah, it does feel that way because it does, however people put it. We always talk about sample size. We're just not really able to rely on him week in, week out. There's too much evidence of that there. It just is what it is a little bit. And the other injury worry, and not quite Jota levels, but Curtis Jones can sometimes pick up innocuous ones that rumble on and on. I'm guessing we're just waiting for news on what that is.
Yeah, it's just going to be one of those where we'll find out on Friday from the manager. Again, hopefully that's not a niggle that turns into something more serious. Because, again, Jones, he's had setbacks, hasn't he, and injuries, and really kind of needs to stamp that out, hopefully. I mean, it's just unlucky, and there's not a lot he can do about it. But you just hope he can stamp it out soon because it's obviously frustrating and it kills his momentum from time to time. So, yeah, we'll see what the manager has to say about that one. And hopefully it's just one where they were very, very cautious and brought him off early just to make sure he's ready for Ipswich.
Fingers crossed for that. Yeah, we are waiting on a few injury updates. We'll see what Friday brings. And maybe the big off-the-field story, I'm not going to talk about it too much. I'm just going to play everyone the first 20 seconds.
Jurgen Klopp has announced his decision to step down at the end of this season.
You either never stop or you stop too late. It's easy to fall in love with this place. You are part of a family.
I mean, I still get emotional, almost goosebumps just watching that now. I mean, it's an incredible thing that's coming. But I did want to ask you about this. The launch date is February the 28th, which is right in an important part of the season. Are you surprised or just not that they're bringing it out at this time?
To be honest, no, because I think this is typically, the Amazon, when they buy the rights for it, they have the right to decide when they want it to go out, and Liverpool will have acknowledged that. And I just think sometimes, I saw a couple of comments about that, and I kind of think we, because we're outside it a lot of the time, we make way too big of a thing out of things like this. Like, the players could not care less. No one's thinking about, when's the documentary out when they're playing in a Champions League final, or they're playing in a big game, or they just don't care. And I'm sure they'll watch it because they're in it, and they'll maybe pay attention to that, and it'll be interesting. But in terms of a distraction to the club, or I just don't think it will be. I think there'll be some great news lines we get out of it, some interesting insights, or there should be if the company that made it got anything that they wanted out of it. But I just don't agree with the idea that it's going to be a distraction or anything like that. Because, as I say, when you're closer to it and you're kind of in that environment, I just have never got the impression that players give a monkey's really about this sort of stuff at all.
Yeah, it's probably believable. It'll just be, say, fans, but it will be intriguing as to how they make this. And there's many parts of it, and it's an overview his entire time rather than just the last year, which may be a good thing as well. We'll see what that brings. And final bit, normally we talk about wider football. To be honest, everything's just about Liverpool, and we know we've got Ipswich at the weekend. And a glance at the table here, maybe it's not the worst time with a few injuries to be playing the team in 18th who ship a lot of goals this way. Did last night, you think, give you a good indication on who's playing, as in like Konate was rested, Gakpo was rested? It'll be easy to pick this lineup against Ipswich.
Yeah, I think it's just going to go with what he clearly sees as kind of his strongest lineup at the moment. So I think we'll probably see that. And as you say, a few hints really from who wasn't involved in the game last night, really. And, I think obviously you could kind of make the case that you could even maybe do some rotation for this in terms of, keep a few on the sidelines and not. But I just think, with it being the Premier League, that risk is there. Even the teams lower down, Liverpool have had tough games against them. And Ipswich, I know they got absolutely hammered last time by Man City, but they've had a lot of closer games. They've had closer games against some of the big guns as well. So they're capable of making it difficult for you. So you just cannot underestimate that, really. And you want to see Liverpool put out as strong a team as they possibly can and hopefully then put in a really good performance that earns them a win. And yeah, that'll just be one more game closer to the finish line and another 3 points on board. So yeah, hopefully we'll see that.
Yeah, I know people are talking about huge wins and this could, get record numbers or whatever, or a hammering, but it's just about injuries. That's the only two priority at the moment, the way it's going. So we'll see what that brings. And the only other thing about wider football that is worth me asking you, there is a lot of clubs, not ourselves, making moves. And obviously, people are casting envious glances and different bits. Is there any move that you're looking at in the Premier League that has just raised an eyebrow, or you actually think that's a good move by that club at all? Because there's some interesting ones that are sort of coming onto the docket.
I haven't seen anything that kind of makes me, I don't know, kind of sit up and take notice. I mean, as some of the players that City are signing, I don't know a lot about them. I think, one that I maybe would be kind of, that's interesting is if they get a Douglas Luiz loan done, which is being touted at the moment, because I think midfield is City's biggest issue quite clearly. And I think, if they can do something there, then maybe they'll be a tiny bit stronger for the rest of the season. Certainly not strong enough to close the gap to Liverpool. Absolutely not. But, maybe it'll just make that visit to Man City that's coming up a little bit trickier if they have an actual kind of midfield there. So we'll kind of see how that plays out. But I haven't seen anything, and there's nothing that anyone rivals have done that would make you kind of concerned or anything like that. So to be honest, not really. And it's been a kind of quietish January anyway, hasn't it? So maybe there's going to be a mad last few days and some really interesting moves made there. But I haven't personally seen anything. I think quite interesting actually what Nottingham Forest are potentially doing with Cunha and Wissa being linked at the moment. But outside of that, I haven't seen too much that's kind of shocked me or anything. I think that's going to completely change the complexion of the table.
No, there's no moves that really are sort of too headline. Then Marmoush is still to complete to City if that goes ahead at the same time as well. That'll be an interesting one. I suppose the only final one to talk about with Liverpool, I know you're a massive fan of his. All the stories seem to be that there's a championship queue lining up for Jayden Danns. You're expecting that one to get done, aren't you, realistically?
Yeah, I would say so. Obviously, his minutes have been kind of limited. And as Slot said to me the other day in his press conference, Jota's going to be back soon. So we're not worried there. They've got Diaz, they've got Nunes, who's now playing well. So, it's probably much better for Jayden Danns to head out on that loan and get that experience. So I hope he gets a good move. I hope he gets a club that plays good football and can service him with chances, because he will get goals if that's the case. I don't want him ideally being kind of involved in a relegation battle where it's a scrap and he doesn't get to show how good he is. I'm really hoping for a good loan move for him and hopefully a good enough loan move that kind of tees him up to come back to Liverpool and have an impact next season, because I really, really rate him highly.
Yeah, fingers crossed he does get a loan move, but we'll see what it brings. We'll see what this week brings. We'll see what Arne Slot says at the press conference. There's no further bad injury news, and then we'll all gear up for Ipswich. But there we are, ladies and gents. Another Media Matters, and just in case you missed it at the start, the Reds are top of every single table you can care to mention. So all it leaves me to say as ever is, for the time, the answers, and for the insight, David, it is much appreciated.
Thank you for having me.
And ladies and gents, that was Matters.